My name is Bohdan, and today I want to cover the topic critique of judgment by Immanuel Kant and make a short overview on it. Immanuel Kant's critique of judgment completes the critical project begun in the critique of pure reason and the critique of practical reason, the first and second critiques respectively. The book is divided into two main sections, the critique of aesthetic judgment and the critique of teleological judgment, and also includes a large overview of the entirety of Kant's critical system arranged in its final form. This so-called first introduction was not published during Kant's lifetime, for Kant wrote a replacement for publication. The critical project, that of exploring the limits and conditions of knowledge, had already produced the critique of pure reason, in which Kant argued for a transcendental aesthetic, an approach to the problems of perception in which space and time are argued not to be objects, but are ways in which the observant subject's mind organizes and structures the sensory world. The end result of this inquiry is that there are certain fundamental antinomies in human reason, most particularly that there is a complete inability to favor, on the one hand, the argument that all behavior and thought is determined by external causes, and on the other, that there is an actual spontaneous causal principle at work in human behavior. The first position of causal determinism is adopted, in Kant's view, by empirical scientists of all sorts. Moreover, it led to the idea, perhaps never fully to be realized, but of a final science in which all empirical knowledge could be synthesized into a full and complete causal explanation of all events possible to the world. The second position of spontaneous causality is implicitly adopted by all people as they engage in moral behavior. This position is explored more fully in the critique of practical reason. The critique of judgment constitutes a discussion of the place of judgment itself, which must overlap both the understanding, which however operates from within the deterministic framework, and reason, which operates on the grounds of freedom. The first part of the book, the critique of aesthetic judgment, discusses the four possible reflective judgments: the agreeable, the beautiful, the sublime, and the good. Kant makes it clear that these are the only four possible reflective judgments, as he relates them to the table of judgments from the critique of pure reason. Reflective judgments differ from determinative judgments, thus of the first two critiques. In reflective judgments, we seek to find unknown universals for given particulars, whereas in determinative judgment, we must subsume given particulars under universals that are already known, as Kant put it. The agreeable is a purely sensory judgment, judgments in the form of this steak is good or this chair is soft. These are purely subjective judgments based on inclination alone. The good is essentially a judgment that something is ethical, the judgment that something conforms with moral law, which in the Kantian sense is essentially a claim of modality, a coherence with a fixed and absolute notion of reason. It is in many ways the absolute opposite of the agreeable, in which it is purely objective judgment. Things are either moral or they are not, according to Kant. The judgment that something is sublime is a judgment that is beyond the limits of comprehension, that is, an object of fear. However, Kant makes clear that the object must not actually be threatening. It merely must be recognized as dissolving a fear. Kant's view on the beautiful and the sublime is frequently read as an attempt to resolve one of the problems left following his depiction of moral law in the critique of practical reason, namely, that it is impossible to prove that we have free will, and thus impossible to prove that we are bound under moral law. The beautiful and the sublime both seem to refer to some external nominal order, and thus to the possibility of a nominal self that possesses free will. In this section of the critique, Kant also establishes a faculty of mind that is in many ways the inverse of judgment, the faculty of genius. Whereas judgment allows one to determine whether something is beautiful or sublime, genius allows one to produce that is beautiful or sublime. Schopenhauer noted that Kant was concerned with the analysis of abstract concepts rather than with perceived objects. He does not start from the beautiful itself, from the direct beautiful object of perception, but from the judgment concerning the beautiful, says he. Kant was strongly interested in all of his critiques with the relation between mental operations as external objects. Quotation by Schopenhauer. His attention is especially aroused by the circumstance that such a judgment is obviously the expression of something occurring in the subject, but is nevertheless as universally valid as if it concerned the quality of the object. It is this that struck him, not the beautiful itself. The book form is the result of concluding that beauty can be explained by examining the concept of suitableness. Schopenhauer stated that thus we have the queer combination of the knowledge and the beautiful, with that of the suitableness of natural bodies into one faculty of knowledge, called power of judgment, and the treatment of the two heterogeneous subjects in one book. Kant is inconsistent, according to Schopenhauer, because after it had been incessantly repeated in the Critique of Pure Reason that understanding is the ability to judge, and after the forms of its judgments are made the foundation, stone of all philosophy, a quite peculiar power of judgment now appears which is entirely different from the ability. With regard to theological judgment, Schopenhauer claimed that Kant tried to say only this: although organized bodies necessarily seem to us as though they were constructed according to a conception of purpose which preceded them, which still does not justify us in assuming this to be objectively the case. This is in accordance with Kant's usual concern with the correspondence between subjectivity and objectivity. Our minds want to think that natural bodies were made by a purposeful intelligence, like ours. Thank you very much, subscribe and see you in next video. Goodbye.